Who wins the NFL MVP for 2024? We want to hear your votes. Hit us up in the comments. We did a survey on this a while back, and about 41% of the people voted for a certain player. And we're going to talk about all the players here. We've got six we want to mention. We think two are probably going to win it ultimately. We're going to start off with Josh Allen with the Buffalo Bills. We're going to make the case for him that he has done more with less of a supporting cast. Unbelievable plays this year, taking the Bills, of course, to the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. We'll see how that turns out. I'm showing when I recorded this. Saquon Barkley, we think, has turned the Eagles into a dominant force. They were good last year. They obviously made the Super Bowl a few years back, but this year, the balance of running and passing have really made them what has to be a favorite in the NFC. And then we have to look at the player we think probably will get it is going to be Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens. He's already won it twice. He's had a better statistical season this year than he has in years past. Unbelievable TD to interception ratio. We're going to show you the numbers later. I want to start you off here with a couple of plays, just showing what these guys can do. And let's not forget Jared Goff, the number one seed Detroit Lions, despite what happened to them in that game against Washington, had a great regular season, put up some really impressive numbers. Obviously led the Lions two straight really good seasons, playoff disappointments notwithstanding. And then we've got the newcomer, Sam Darnold with the Minnesota Vikings. Again, can't look at what happened in the playoffs in that final game against Detroit, but during the season, really an impressive year. Not many people expected that from Darnold, so a nice little surprise there, but consistently had the Vikings winning, won 14 games this season, so very impressive there. And then we want to look at a player not too many people mentioned in the MVP discussion, but is putting up great numbers nonetheless. That's Joe Burrow. The Bengals didn't make the playoffs, but he himself had a phenomenal year. We don't think that he will get that because people do look at winning teams and teams that made the playoffs. But for our next section, we want to ask, what is the primary criteria for the MVP? It's somewhat questionable. Is it strictly a stats award? Are we going to just look at the numbers and we'll show you these statistic comparisons later? But really, we think it's more than that. We think maybe it's who has the most relative value to his team. We're going to say we've highlighted these in different colors to show you that. We think Lamar's going to have the better stats, but then if you look at the team around him, the Buffalo Bills, we think Josh Allen is the better player considering what he has to work with. So we'll get into those evaluations in a little bit. And before we continue, if you would, just join our channel. And if you like this video or find it useful, like it and then subscribe. We provide weekly NFL picks, highlights, and sports travel. Thank you. And in this quarterback crazy league, we're going to start off with a running back, the only running back on this list, Saquon with the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to look at the unbelievable numbers that he's put up this year and what he's meant to that Eagles team, making them a clear favorite in the NFC. Look at what he's done this year. Had he not sat out the final game of the year, could have set the single season rushing record. They had the Eagles in the championship game with him. Last year, they got bounced early by the Buccaneers. And as we stated, he's the only non quarterback being discussed. Maybe they should create a separate award for non quarterbacks. I mean, can't discount what Saquon has meant to the Eagles. They've really been an impressive team with him in the fold. And that started with our quarterbacks. We're going to start off with Joe Burrow. Again, we mentioned that he put up great statistics this season, almost 5,000 yards passing. Really great. The touchdowns, he's got 43 total touchdowns to go against only 9 interceptions. So again, very impressive statistics. Let's see how he compares to the other players on this list. We think he will be somewhat discounted because the Bengals did not make the playoffs and they started off kind of ugly. They made a great run late, but had a bad early season. And next we have Sam Darnold with the Minnesota Vikings. And again, a late season slump, really showing the inability to throw the ball away. Took far too many sacks in the game against the Lions and the Rams. But you've got to look at the full season and really very impressive numbers. 35 touchdowns to go against only 12 picks, 4,300 passing yards, and had the Vikings up there, really one win away from the number one seed in the NFC. Unfortunate late season collapse, but we think Darnold definitely should be considered for this award. And another player who had a late season collapse, really just the playoff game against Washington, Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. But if you look at the regular season stats, again, that's what this award is based on. 4,600 passing yards, 37 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and again, led the Lions to the number one seed in the NFC, the best record the Lions have ever had, best seed they've ever had. That should be considered for something. Again, unfortunately for Lions fans, couldn't do it in the playoffs. So now let's talk about the two favorites for this award. It clearly has to come down to between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. When you hear all the conversations online, check the internet, all that. Most people think Josh Allen will win this, but then again, if you look at the stats, it favors Lamar. So it really, I mean, and then you come down to the Ravens-Bills game in the playoffs. They don't use that for criterion for voting for it, but Josh Allen won that game, and Lamar unfortunately had a very, very bad game by his standards. So let's look first at Lamar's statistics, and then we'll compare Josh's, and then we'll talk about what we think the voters will look at and give our prediction for this. So we look at Lamar, 5,000 total yards. That includes rushing and passing. And look at this number, 45 touchdowns, that's rushing and passing, to go against only 4 interceptions, a 10-to-1 ratio. That is incredible. And if you look at Josh Allen's statistics, they are good. They're not as good as Lamar's, but they're not far off. As you can see, 4,200 total yards, that's rushing and passing, 40 total touchdowns, again, combining rushing and passing, and then only 6 interceptions. If you look at Josh Allen's historical years, the interceptions have been a big problem. So to stay single digits on interceptions, definitely an improvement for him for this season. When we put this question to the viewers a few weeks back, many of the comments for Josh Allen talked about the fact that his supporting cast, the team around him wasn't as good. Well, let's take a look at the All-Pro selections to back up that argument. 0 All-Pro selections outside of Josh Allen for the Bills, 5 All-Pro selections other than Lamar Jackson on the Baltimore Ravens. And then if you look at their overall season, you'd have to say that's true. So Josh Allen, you could definitely make the case he's done more with less talent around him. So now let's take a look at what should be the criteria for the MVP and what the voters should base their selection on. If we're looking at a fantasy football, who puts up the better numbers award, I personally would look at it that way, honestly. Look at the numbers. I'd vote for that. I'd say that has to go to Lamar Jackson, right? Had a better year statistically, but it's most valuable, not most outstanding. You see that the terms need to be kind of clarified. I think you should also look at who has done more, made the most individual effort, and most valuable to his team. We think in that case it's going to go to Josh Allen, because without him, there's no way the Bills make the playoffs at all. Definitely Josh Allen has done more with less talent around him. So we have to look at that. So the voters, what are they weighing? We think it has to be some combination of the statistics, some combination of who is the most valuable. We think ultimately there will be some compromise. We would say, like they did back in 2003 with Steve McNair and Peyton Manning, we say it's a co-MVP. These two players are really, really close. We think you give one the award for his numbers, one the value that he had to his team, and probably the best season he's had, that's Josh Allen. So this happened in 1997, we believe. Brett Favre, Barry Sanders shared it, and we mentioned 2003 with McNair and Peyton Manning. One of our viewers is the nephew of Steve McNair, so this precedent has happened. So let's see if they can do it again and give both these players the recommendation they deserve. Just a reminder that the NFL MVP is announced on February 6th in New Orleans, obviously the week leading up to the Super Bowl. And then a program note, check out our video on the NFL Championship game picks. We have our initial video. Then we're going to be putting in a follow-up. We're going to do our best bets and game analysis. And for Super Bowl week, we're going to actually be doing more player props, etc. So be sure to subscribe and set notifications so you get those videos as soon as we release them. Thank you.
That's all for this time. Thank you for joining. Please subscribe to our channel, and we look forward to sharing our future videos with you.